breaks, when your leadership fails, bad things are going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind that we will be able to document bad things happening on both sides. But when we speak of systemic violations of international humanitarian law, there's only one side violating it systemically, because what do you call it when you have a civilian population in place? You haven't evacuated them as you are required to do if you want to make this a battlefield. And instead, you keep the civilians in place and you put your military equipment there. It's called a human shield. That is a violation of the international humanitarian law. That is a war crime. It is Ukraine that is committing the most massive violations of international humanitarian law, and we all know it. We all know it. We see it on TV every day, but we excuse it because we call it the noble Ukrainian defense against the brutal Russian attackers. But it's not, there's nothing noble about putting civilians at risk. That is a crime under international humanitarian law. And that's just the reality that will eventually be accepted once the dust has settled, the emotions have calmed down, and people examine the facts in their totality, free of prejudice.
But Scott, are you talking about the instances where you had Azov or other groups like them blocking civilians from leaving Mariupol, for example, or do you mean just the fact that there are so many people that are being told to just stand their ground and basically fight the Russians? What do you mean exactly? Because some people might say, well, the Russians are just using that as an excuse. They're going to bomb civilians and then claim that they were human shields. That's what they say about the Russian military tactic in Syria and in Ukraine.
Right. Well, I'm not going to speak to Syria because I don't have the data set in front of me. What I do know about what's going on in Ukraine is, for instance, if you recall, the Russians hit a shopping center in Kiev a while back. And the first thing is, this is proof that the Russians are hitting civilian targets, until we found out from the video, the Ukrainians were parking multiple rocket launch systems and ammunition for their 2S7 Prius artillery pieces all throughout that area, that the Ukrainians had turned this into a legitimate military target, which the Russians had no choice but to take out, which they did. That's what I'm talking about. And these kind of actions are, in far greater proportion than, for instance, the gross human shields that took place in Mariupol. That's a gross violation of international humanitarian law.